Listener-supported St. Gabriel Catholic Radio AM 820 brings you Family Sanctuary, a show that inspires living the gospel message in word and deed within our families. And now, Family Sanctuary with host Peggy Hartshorn.
Welcome to the Family Sanctuary, focusing on life-giving relationships and the family. I'm your host, Peggy Hartshorn, chairman of Heartbeat International, that advances life-affirming pregnancy help around the world. And today our program is called Infertility, a Journey of Hope. And we're going to be focusing on infertility, obviously, and it's much in the news these days, with couples turning particularly, unfortunately, to artificial reproductive technologies like IVF. Today we're going to talk about what is it like to experience infertility. What is it like for the couple to experience it? And what is it like for those around them to have someone in the family or a dear friend suffering from infertility? How does that affect the community? And how might we respond if we know someone who's suffering from infertility? We're going to have another program in this series with our same guest, focusing particularly on IVF, which has been much in the news. So let's start, and I want to introduce our wonderful guest and expert on infertility and also on the Catholic teaching on fertility and infertility and reproductive technology. Our guest is Marie Meaney. Welcome, Marie.
Thank you, Peggy. It's wonderful being here with you.
So glad to have you. Marie is, I should say, Dr. Marie Meaney has her doctorate of philosophy, actually from Oxford University, a degree in modern languages and philosophy from Oxford. And she's also taught at the International Academy of Philosophy in Liechtenstein. She's multilingual, and she and her husband actually are both multilingual. She's taught also at the University of Villanova in Philadelphia before the birth of their daughter. And since then, she's taught international courses at the Theological Institute in Trumau, Austria. So she's published several works on infertility. They've been published in several different languages, but she's also a beautiful English speaker. So we're glad to have you with us today, Marie. And I have to mention, too, that Marie has been a tremendous help to Heartbeat International through the years, particularly in helping us with some of our wonderful European contacts and pregnancy help in Europe, and particularly Italy. So thank you for that, Marie.
Not at all. It's been my pleasure.
Marie's husband is Dr. Joseph Meaney, who's the president of the National Catholic Bioethics Center. So both are really experts on the moral teaching of the Catholic Church on a variety of areas, but particularly on family and fertility and infertility. So, Marie, welcome to the program again, and I'm really looking forward to having our conversation. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Peggy.
Yeah.
Me too.
So we want to focus in our first program on what is it like to experience infertility? Because now I mentioned in the introduction that you do have a wonderful daughter. You suffered infertility before she was conceived and born, and then something that sometimes we call secondary infertility, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it took us 9 years to have our first daughter and first child, which was a huge surprise and great blessing. We didn't quite know whether it was going to happen or not. Doctors were giving us different kind of prognosis. And then after her birth, to our great joy and in sorrow, we were expecting again and lost that baby. And then unfortunately nothing happened anymore until we were past the age. I was past the age, but we've certainly had the experience, and I have to say my heart just goes out to couples who are going through this tremendous suffering. Now, I have to make clear, though, that not everybody experiences it as being a tragedy. So there's sort of three different groups of people, and there's nothing wrong with being one and the other. It's just that being in the one that I've been in is a particularly painful one. So for some people, it's really a human tragedy, and it feels like there's nothing that can make up for this absence of children. and they have really a broken heart. Then there are those who find it hard and they struggle with it, but it's not quite so crushing. And then there are those who really don't mind, and it's not a big deal for them. So I'm going to be particularly speaking to the group for whom this is crushing, and I wasn't expecting it myself, I have to say. I mean, first of all, one generally goes into marriage thinking that bearing children is not going to be a problem, and so it comes as a big surprise, and one just starts feeling incredibly helpless after seeing various doctors and trying different therapies, and it's just not happening, and you feel first that courage is going to sort of get you through that, and somehow it doesn't. So it's been compared to the loss of a child. So people whose children have died, and it's simply the loss of a child that has never been. For some, they have lots of miscarriages, and that's the way their infertility expresses itself, which is also absolutely heart-wrenching. And for others, they simply never conceive, or it's a mix of both. So I basically want to tell to couples it's normal for this to be very hard for you, and it's not something you can simply shake off and ignore. And it's normal for this to take a long time to work through.
Mm-hmm. And that brings up, I'm sure, in your mind as well as mine, the fact that not everybody, of course, understands that, and so they may be responding to a woman or a couple experiencing infertility by saying just the wrong things, like, "Oh, I'm sure you'll have a baby soon," or "You'll be okay now. Don't worry about this." And just if you get over the stress, I'm sure you'll get pregnant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the things that so with a lot of sad and serious emotional events in people's lives, the people around them just don't know how to respond. So I'm sure that's one of the sufferings that you experience as well, right? A couple that's infertile.
Yes, absolutely. So, of course, one is surrounded by family and friends, and though they generally try to be helpful, they often, as you mentioned, Peggy, end up saying the wrong thing. And that's, your heart is breaking, and then that is sort of added to your already crushing cross. And, I'm not blaming family and friends. It's so hard looking in to understand what's going on. And that's one of the reasons I actually wrote this book with a chapter just on that, to help family and friends, because I felt when you're in the pain, it's so hard to articulate what you're going through and to express to the members of your family what you need and what you don't need because you're in so much pain. So I thought, well, that way families can read and realize what to do and what not to say. And most of the time, it's really about not saying anything other than, expressing your sorrow for them and to them, and just saying that you're there for them, and not offering solutions as good as they may be if you're not asked. So if the couple or one of the spouses opens their heart and asks you, well, then yes, please, if you have some great medical idea, then please do. But you have to realize that the couple, it's like they're hanging on the cross. And if you're telling them, come on, this is not so bad, or it's going to work out, this is that's not going to cut it.
Right.
And you have to be aware as a family member that you're not going to be able to resolve this problem in all likelihood. You're not going to be able to say the word that suddenly unties this pain, because it's so deep that other than you miraculously being able to give them a child, you're not going to be able to take that pain away. So the best you can do is really be like Mary and St. John under the cross for the couple, or like Simon, carry the cross with them. And how does that happen? That happens through compassion. That's what compassion is about. It's, if you look at the Latin cum and patere, it means suffering with, bearing with, and that means being patient, because for some it seems like, well, it's been 5 years or 10 years or 20 years or whatever. And, haven't they gotten over this? Why can't they go to the baptism of their nephew and nieces? And why is it so hard? Can't they finally get over it? Well, we're not there to tell somebody how long their pain is supposed to last. They would love, I'm sure, to be out of this and be able to serenely see other babies' baptisms. But we can't determine that. We need to give them some space, and they need to be patient with themselves, too, and realize that this is going to take time.
So this is actually when couples are experiencing this, as you say, not everyone experiences it the same way, but
Yes.
when this suffering is really so intense, when this is a cross that Jesus is asking you to bear for some unknown reason, things like, and I was intrigued with in your book that you mentioned this, that being invited to a baby shower or a baptism is very difficult because you just sometimes you can't go or you don't know how to respond. It's that intense. That was amazing to me. So some of the things that normally we would consider, oh, everybody's going to be excited to come. No, that's not how you feel. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's not, let me just also clarify that it doesn't necessarily mean that the couple is envious. They, in their heart of hearts, they may well rejoice, and they do rejoice often about the other people having babies, but it just brings up their own pain. And that can be so unbearable that it is hard. So it's, say to the couple in that situation, I think you should feel free to say, I'm really happy for you, and I really appreciate you inviting me to that baptism baby shower. But I'm so sorry, I just can't come, or we just can't come. This is too hard for us. But you might also say, well, this is going to be hard, but I think I can do that. You have to see yourself in front of God, just determine, is this something I can now do? Am I simply taking this as an excuse because it's, somewhat hard, but I can do that, or is it just too hard? And for those outside, I'd say, feel free to invite them. Absolutely, they shouldn't be left out. But also say, this may be hard for you, so please don't feel obliged to come, though we'd love to have you there.
Mm-hmm. They, of course, need to be understanding. We're talking about Marie Meaney's book, When Expecting Doesn't Happen. We're talking about her experience, she and her husband, Joseph, their experience of infertility and secondary infertility. But this beautiful book and that explains more of that internal suffering as well as how it affects the people around them and how that their reaction affects the couple. The book is titled When Expecting Doesn't Happen, Turning Infertility into a Journey of Hope. And it's published by Marie Meaney, written by Marie Meaney, published by EmmausRoad.org. So it's a beautiful, beautiful book. It's short. It's written in a beautiful, easy-to-read style, but also very poetic, Marie.
Oh, thank you.
I love the book. And it's really the best thing I have ever seen, explaining the struggles of a couple with infertility, but also then providing the hope and focusing in on some fertility alternatives for treatment that many people don't know about. We're going to be focusing in on that in our second program. What are alternatives to the artificial reproductive technology of a baby conceived in a petri dish? We'll be focusing in on that in our second program. But Marie, in your title, Turning Infertility into a Journey of Hope, tell me a little bit about the journey of hope that the journey of suffering that you experienced can become a journey of hope.
Yeah, it's hard to believe when you're in it because all you're hoping for is, of course, the baby, and you wonder how you're going to manage if that baby is not going to show up, you know? And it just feels like an unmitigated human tragedy. So it feels, perhaps some feel like this is a slap in the face to even speak about hope. At the same time, when I was going through it, it was helpful for me to see some couples that clearly, though they were still struggling, were in a different place than I was. So to see that even though they didn't have children of their own, and that even if adoption had fallen through for them, that somehow they were at peace, and that seemed so unreachable for me. And frustratingly so, because, we're practicing Catholics. We wanted this, of course, to do this, walk this journey with God, but it just felt like a dark night of the soul. And as so often the case in a dark night of the soul, you feel like you're at fault. Mm-hmm. You're at fault. You're not doing something right, because otherwise you should just be sort of going through this with flying colors and, and be a witness to the world. And, and instead you feel like a weeping willow. And so I think it's very important for couples suffering from infertility to hear that, no, you can and you will in all likelihood get to a different place if you walk this with God. And, one key factor for me, and it seems so simple, and I just didn't get it for a long time, was to allow myself to mourn. And it's easier said than done, because we sort of pull ourselves together and we think that with courage we can master this, and that unfortunately often trying to be courageous and pulling ourselves together prevents us from mourning. Mm-hmm. And mourning simply means that, again, realizing this is painful and I can't skip the stage. Except if suddenly I am expecting and this pregnancy comes to term. I can't skip this stage. I have to go through this pain. And I also have to realize it doesn't mean shouldering the pain that I'm imagining will expect me for the next decades, which is far too heavy to carry. So all I'm expected to do is that was another big insight of mine, which, again, of course, I've read about in many spirituality books, but somehow realizing it for myself was this key moment, is it's not about accepting this for this month, this week, this day. It's only about expecting it for this very instant. And I realized that, well, if it's just for this instant, I can accept it. But if I think about, perhaps God will never give me children, or not for the next few years, then I am struggling with Him. I'm fighting with Him. I just couldn't accept that because it was too hard for me to do, however much I wanted to. And by just breaking it down into the current moment, suddenly I felt, okay, so I can let that pain enter me more deeply, and thereby work my way through this and reach a different place. And, also just looking at the witnesses of the saints helped me to realize, it's just about this one little step. So I don't know, I'm sure you've heard, and I write about her in this book, Chiara Corbella, this wonderful Italian woman who died like 10 years ago or 12 years ago. And she became such a role model for me, though she only died once I had my daughter, but then to face the secondary infertility bit. She was this young Italian woman who got pregnant shortly after her marriage, and her first baby was very handicapped, and then it turned out wasn't going to live, so she brought the pregnancy to term and then held the baby for a few hours. She and her husband baptized the baby, and then the baby died, and that was tremendously hard, but they felt carried. So God gave them also this grace of joy, which some people get, not everybody. So again, you're not doing something wrong if you're not joyful in the situation. But God gave her that as a sign, also, I think, for us. And then second time she gets pregnant, completely different handicap this time in the child. But again, the child is going to die, and the doctors didn't know why. Didn't make any sense. Friends and family didn't know what to say. They lost many friends who didn't know how to deal with the situation. So again, they have this child hold it for a few hours and have it baptized, and just love the child for the little time that is given to them. And then, she gets pregnant again because they just wanted to. They just wanted to have children, and this time everything seemed to be going well, and suddenly she develops a kind of cancer that only, elderly people who've been smoking all their lives get, so the cancer of the mouth. And it doesn't make any sense, and she only wants kind of the treatment that won't harm her baby. And then they induce the birth like 1 month before the due date, just to get her treatment more quickly once it's safe for the baby. And then a year later she passes away. But as she's there in the last days, her husband is telling her, that Christ said that it's easy to carry his cross. You'll find it easy. And she said, oh, it is sweet. And what a thing to say! It brings tears to my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And he also their term was piccoli passi, small little steps, just doing one step at a time. And by doing that, I mean, they did this incredibly heroic thing of welcoming these children who then died, and then having a baby, and then she dying thereafter afterwards. But what a beautiful witness! And I'm convinced that she will, one day be canonized. And there's beautiful biography on her by friends of theirs. So anyway, hearing these stories, I think, also help you realize what feels like this dark night will get you to a different place. But it's God's timing. It's not you. And you can help, of course, by mourning and perhaps getting psychological help. If this is turning into depression, then please don't wait until this is turning into depression.
Mm-hmm.
Find a good Catholic therapist. Find a good priest to talk to. Don't let this be, paralyzing your life.
Marie, your insight about when in the moment when you experience this intense suffering, or in a moment when it seems almost overwhelming, the feeling gets so intense. Let's talk again about what you were saying, which is I've heard many people talk about this to a certain extent, living in the present moment. And you were talking about living in the present moment of the suffering, but realizing that it is, if you can live in that particular moment, you're not being asked to live forever in that moment. Is that correct? You're being asked to live in that particular moment.
Exactly.
And so realizing even that this is something that you will experience at this very moment, yes, but God is not asking you to experience that same intensity forever. Is that what you're saying?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, that's certainly part of it, but I think I'm also saying something more in that we imagine the worst. When we're in this, it just feels there's no end to it. But honestly, if you look at your life so far and things that you were dreading and then perhaps didn't turn out as badly or didn't last as long, and sometimes, of course, perhaps they were worse. You never know. But the thing is that we imagine our future, and we have no idea, no way of knowing if, tomorrow I might conceive, or in a month, even if I don't, I might feel different about it, and I might be in a different place. I mean, we have no way of knowing, and the point is that God is giving us grace for this moment, not for 10 years from now. Now, yes, he will give us once I'm there, in 10 years from now, and I might be in a completely different place. So the point is, we often, we can't stand the difficulties of the present moment, and so we project ourselves forward, sometimes for the better, but then we tend to daydream, or sometimes for the worse. But the point is that by staying in the moment, this is just becoming one moment after another, and somehow it becomes feasible. And for those women who've gone through childbirth and who've perhaps had a doula or a good midwife who tells them, it's just for now. It's just the pain for now. And you're not going to go through this again, this pain again, this contraction again. It's going to be a next one. But, at some point, this is going to be over. So by breaking it up into little bits, it becomes much more manageable. And it reminds me of we want security. We want to control everything, and infertility shows us just how little we are in control.
Right.
But we want to sort of also be in control of our emotions and of our pain and how to be able to manage it. And it reminds me of the Israelites in the desert, to whom God gave manna every day. But when they tried to hoard it, it would corrupt, it would disintegrate, it would rot. Because the next day he would give them manna, and they should simply have been trusting God that they would get that manna. Just the same for us, of course. We have the Eucharist. But every moment God gives us the grace, just for this moment. And if I stand still in a way in this moment and say, I'm accepting this pain for this moment, I am mourning. And whether I realize it or not, that means I am working my way through this tunnel.
Sure.
And I will reach a point where this is not anymore as heartbreaking. We see that in the loss of people. When we lose dearly beloved ones, it's incredibly intense. It's very painful. And then if we go through the mourning process and don't get stuck in it, then, after a few years, we see that, wow, it's still hard, but it's become better. And it's the same for this.
Right. That's so beautiful and does give so much hope, I'm sure, to some of our listeners who are experiencing grief or need to be really experiencing the grief that they may be denying, but they need to experience that. And so God gives us the grace of that moment. That's a beautiful message, Marie. And we're speaking to Dr. Marie Meaney. Her book is When Expecting Doesn't Happen, Turning Infertility into a Journey of Hope, which is published by EmmausRoad.org. And I want to mention, Marie, too, we're at the close of our program, that there's a beautiful ministry, too, that's been forming online and in person, springsinthedesert.org. Springs in the Desert, which is a Catholic infertility ministry, which I also would recommend. There's a lot of, there are resources, there are online seminars, sharing groups on that website. So there is hope, there is companionship along the way. We are walking with you if you are experiencing infertility and whatever other feelings that the Lord is allowing you to work through. It is for that moment, and there is hope. And in terms of hope for infertility as well, please look in our archives as well for the second program we're doing with Marie Meaney on, it's called Why Not IVF. So Marie, thank you again for being our guest today. We look forward to the second program with you as well. And you are all listening to The Family Sanctuary on St. Gabriel Catholic Radio. And I'm your host, Peggy Hartshorn. To find this program again and other programs from Family Sanctuary, go to stgabrielradio.com, choose our podcasts, and then Family Sanctuary. We're broadcast at 4 o'clock on Saturdays and 2 o'clock on Sundays, right here on St. Gabriel Catholic Radio. So join us again to strengthen our families and make them sanctuaries of life as God intends.
Family Sanctuary is a production of listener-supported St. Gabriel Catholic Radio, AM 820. Archives of Family Sanctuary with Peggy Hartshorn are available at stgabrielradio.com.